It's the weekly 30/30 trading list on the ASX. We're reviewing the 30 best momentum companies over the last quarter and the ones that have had the best improvement in momentum over the last week, what we call the launchpad. Gary Glover has selected his favourite charts from this list and is ready to walk us through them. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good, Chris.
So, been looking through the list, been finding some good momentum, some breakouts, some that have sort of paused after a bit of a rally and then kept kicking. I see you've got WMG on the screen. Is that one of the momentum leaders from this week's 30/30 list?
Yeah, so looking at the number one momentum, which obviously is the quarterly list, so basically strongest for the quarter. So obviously it's had a pretty strong run here. Yeah, I think this was in the list here last week, but the key there is, I think it's sort of it's worth sort of just remembering here, if you get strong rallies, a strong volume, what we're looking for there is a pause. So looking there for a pullback with no volume. So you can see there with WMG here. So I mean, like a lot of stocks, they run up there. Sometimes the volumes aren't that impressive, or sometimes they can be a little bit of volume, and even sometimes they can be big volumes. But if you see big volumes on the sell, then that's the ones you're going to be wary of. When you see them pull back and show very little volume, and then start to see a bit of volume again on the next rally. The next rally doesn't need to be as strong volume-wise, just needs to sort of show a bit of strength more than the pullback, if that makes sense. So this is sort of, got kind of a new high here now. So probably a little vulnerable here. But yeah, it's just worth sort of, when you see that strong move, strong volume, which will be quite a few in this list, sort of showing that, particularly sort of in the weekly in the launchpad. What we're waiting for is a little pullback, little consolidation, and then we're looking for the first signs there. So that's just what we want to be looking for. It's worth sort of just remembering that. So we don't want to see light volume. Like a lot of the stocks that I don't cover, usually they might have popped on light volume, or they might have that they might have sort of seen some sort of heavy volume on the sell down. So I'm just not interested. So those are the things that I tend to avoid. What I want to see is strong volume on the way up, and I want to see a consolidation with light volume. So number two is one. So this really just means, there's no consolidation phase in there. There's a tiny little VCP in there, but would have been pretty hard to trade that one, Chris, being a small stock and all. But so now we just wait. It's had a decent run, pretty decent volume for this stock. So you want to see some sort of consolidation pause, and then, so we just put that on the list. We keep an eye on it. Potentially nothing happens there and nothing good happens, or we don't see what we want to see, but we still put it on our list regardless there, just in case there. WC8 obviously had a bit of a pop here, some volume in there. So just whether it's a bit of a one-off or whether we see some more volume is sort of interesting enough there. This one's a bit of a tight one. You're seeing these sort of, there's a little bit of a VCP in there, but it's pretty hard. Again, pretty small, so not the easiest ones to trade there. Looking for sort of something a little bit more price action like this, where you sort of do see your corrections and then your VCP in there. And that sort of take you to the first pullback, second pullback. Look at that there. That's that's what we want to sort of see, that little tight, and then a little bit of a pop here and some volume there. That's when you sort of can get follow through. So those are the type of things we're looking for. I think on the list there, BEZ. Interesting here, this one. Just like normally that's a fairly large pullback there, which I probably don't like all the time, but has come back and just sat on top of the previous high. So that's sort of somewhat constructive. Even though volumes are up, elevated a little bit in here. The volume did come back in at the last high there. So that's sort of interesting there. Support level, but not the best looking chart, but not the worst either. PNN, this one here, just again, that volume is probably interesting to me. Just a big clump of sort of pretty heavy volume. So just telling me to keep an eye on this one here. So for me, it's more a bit of an add. I think PPK we spoke about last week there. It's had a bit of a little bit of a pop out there. Still big downtrend here, so it's got a lot of moving to do. Pretty light volume on this second rebound here, so you'd want to see a bit of a pause here on this thing. So far, it's not really showing the right signs for me. 360 obviously is sort of one that we had traded there. I did take a little bit of profit into the consolidation there. In hindsight there, if you actually look at that, I'm still looking at that in retrospect, pretty good volume onto that rally, and then inside day, pretty light volume. Day before the announcement, again, very light volume. So we've sort of got two little consolidation days in there. So if we didn't know that the company was reporting the next day, we probably would have been holding that. So I just don't like holding stocks in the earnings report, particularly when they've already had a nice strong bounce already. So, but again, I think it was sort of William Guppy who sort of talked about, if you were sitting in a room and avoiding all the noise in the marketplace and just trading a chart there would have been nothing wrong in that. It's just I just don't like holding stocks into earnings announcements, particularly when the environment's been a little treacherous. So just got to be careful there. MEI is on the list as well. I thought this one was pretty interesting. Just been sort of climbing here quite nicely. So got a few high lows in there. Just nice little consolidation here under the high. So the thing I like there is that not bad volume. That one day selling, which you often see, as long as you don't see any following through, and we're starting to see a little bit of volume coming again. Again, 2 days down in here, still no sort of selling here. So, this is still pretty constructive here. This is often the sort of, what you sort of see, these stocks that sort of keep going higher than you think. So it does look pretty positive. Triple L was another one that's looking not bad here. I mean, just been pretty solid volume through here, Chris, as well. Pretty chunky. Has gone above the previous swing high, which I always think, if this is sort of distribution phase, lower high, lower high, lower high. We've now sort of broken this little high, broken this other high here. So it's this is pretty constructive here. So my old man holds a few of those, so he'll be hoping that goes a bit high actually. So, but yeah, I think that looks pretty solid here so far. XAM, again, this is not a bad looking chart here. What we're seeing here is pretty good volume through to this point here. Saw a little bit of selling in here, but then selling's kind of dried up here until we sort of hit the low. Volume's not awesome through there, but then they dried up here on the pullback there, and they sort of come back in again. So this thing's sort of consolidating here. So maybe it'll consolidate in the range here, tighten up, but definitely one to keep an eye on there. So the volumes are still pretty solid. TPW, I didn't even see this actually, Chris. All the last few days there. Wow. So we talked about Temple Webster a while back there, basically because it had that 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern on the weekly. I think we sort of had a few high lows sort of building up there. Maybe it might have been the daily there. Just a bit of a change of character there, but nice little consolidation there as well.
So is that kind of a pullback in time where the rally happened throughout March and April, and then the second half of April just sort of pulled back and took up more time and less drop in price? Is that kind of those pullbacks?
Yeah, I think I was looking at this on the longer term. I was trying to sort of see there. I think it had sort of had a few. I guess it's just sort of come back to the high there, and just this is sort of more of a corrective pattern there. There's definitely one that was on my list there a while back there. Just missed that sort of high low there, sort of this little push out of here. But geez, she's had I guess that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of impulsive there. When they struggle to go down, it's often the counter trend which is more important. So people sort of say, why you like things. It's how they sort of trend down sometimes, which is more revealing than actually than the rallies and stuff here. So we saw through here, not a lot of selling through here, a bit of a pop here. So it's the counter trends and stuff there, which is most important there. CTT was actually one I thought was pretty interesting. I did see this one actually. I did sort of see the update on this day, which I thought was pretty positive, but stock went to a new high and then reversed there. So it's sort of gave a pretty shaky pattern there, and that would have been first high low, second high low, and like a third. So a bit of a, almost like a third marginal high there. So I don't really like those marginal highs there, but you could almost argue this is a VCP, and now I think this one might be slightly larger, but this is a nice little tight consolidation there. But this is the the tricky phase of the market here we're in, is that we're definitely getting a lot of it's not the easiest market to trade there. That's not a bad signal on that day. I thought it was a pretty good update. Yet the stock rallied hard, and then it got sold off pretty aggressively, and then the next 2 days it's gone straight up again. So you would have been, if you bought that day there, you would have been a little bit nervous by the end of the day. But yeah, it's definitely that type of market there. I think it's quite choppy there. PMT was the other one there. I think we mentioned this little VCP in here, Chris. A little pullback there, and definitely come out here. The good sign there is that volume. Again, just why volume is so important. Just get rid of all the other indicators. Just look at price and volume. Look, that's moved up there quite nicely, and then we've had 2 days down here, no volume, and the volume's come back in again. So I think that's sort of why that's why volume is sort of important there. That's our sort of quarterly list. There's a bit happening in there. But I thought that the launch pad here actually is there's some interesting stocks in here actually. So these sort of caught my eye a bit more. PNN was sort of one that's had a pretty nice bounce here. Some pretty big volume for this. So that's sort of, when I see a big clump of volume like that, it sort of puts it on the radar for me. So just sort of, for me, it's a bit of a wait and see. So zip on the list. I mean, there's a few stocks in this, a few of those sort of buy now, pay later starting to emerge here. Volume's actually not too bad here. I know this stock's had it's got a lot of headway. So if we look at our weekly chart, it's up against it. So there's going to be so many sort of buyers in here that are just looking to get out into any rallies. That's going to sort of limit the upside, but it is it is sort of constructive there. So it's sort of building here. So it's not the worst sort of chart there. I think Tyro was the other one, which has been on the list a few times there. It's potentially a little VCP in there as well, sort of tightening up under the high there. So it's, again, just a few in that sector there. I'm not a big fan of that sector, but a few of them are actually looking all right. So yeah, Cettire was on the list. I think Cam was on the list as well. Bit of volume there, a bit hard there. Temple Webster was on there. SXE was on there as well. Just maybe a little bit of volume there. Like the fact that Comeback made a new low here, hasn't stayed there too long. So again, a bit small. Nufarm is pretty interesting. Obviously, we're talking about it's just some of those ag stocks will sort of come back to their lows. I mean, this is sort of something which is happening a lot in the marketplace. These sort of stocks are coming back and making marginal new lows. We saw, I think, we saw it with Seek, we saw 360.
This one's particularly hard to trade, right?
Yeah, saw Dicker Data. I mean, just so many stocks are coming back and retesting their lows, and then coming back here. So I think Steve Clark said, do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And at the moment, these false breaks, these marginal new lows in the market are definitely working. So I'd be keeping an eye for sort of stocks that just meander down. There's no heavy volume in there. So what you want to see, you just want to see stocks that come back, retest their lows, no sort of heavy selling popping. I know it doesn't give you much of a chance, but there's plenty have done that. I mean, that Dicker Data did that. Basically came back and retested the low, just kind of meandered down there. There wasn't too much activity in there. The only sort of big volume that was the day of the low. But just so many stocks have actually come back here. Even I just noticed this one, DGL, has just come back again. It's just meandered down, retest the low here. I mean, there's no volume. It's just nothing happening in here. But it's just stocks are just going back and retesting the lows, just non-stop here. So that little sort of trading strategy there is pretty interesting there. One of the other stocks I thought was pretty interesting was ESS. Now, I don't like this, and and I'm going to explain why, because a few of the viewers were asking about Weebit Nano. So why were you? Because Weebit Nano had that massive move and was sort of on our list a while back. Then it had a big crunch, and then it basically went back up again. So the two reasons I don't like, the two reasons I knew this was going to be a rally which probably would fail, was that this is what we call like an overbalance of the trend. So it's the largest correction of the move. So look at this trend here. It's been running for a long time. The corrections are all small, pullbacks are all small, and then bang, this is like the biggest correction of the move. So that's what we call like an overbalance of the trend. So that's negative. Okay. The second thing about this is look at the volume through this period here. Look at the, some pretty aggressive selling, some pretty decent volume on that pullback. And then we started to rally. And what do we see through this rally, Chris, here? Not a lot of volume through there, is it?
It's just not coming with the volume.
Nah, it's modest, but it's not coming there. So it's just not, so as soon as you see a little bit of selling here, bang, that's what we just don't want to see. So that's it's one of our viewers was sort of asking why I didn't like Weebit. No, that's exactly why. So this thing here, something similar here. This has had an okay move here, okay volume, but then wow, look at the selling here. Let's have a really aggressive sell-off, bit of an overbalance, pretty large pullback for it, and then look at the rally here again. The rally has bounced up here, very, very light volume. So there's just no participation in this rally here. So that is a no for me. That's why we sort of we've got to be careful sometimes. So that's why volume is so important there. Okay, so SKO was one that I thought interesting. Again, here's this, here's that retest of the low, Chris. So basically comes back, retests the low. You can see through this whole period there, no volume. Very just meanders down here. Goes to a new low for maybe 1 or 2 days maximum, and then starts to rally up here. We saw a bit of volume in here. It might just be a one-off here, but that is just reoccurring over and over again in this current marketplace. Well, there we go. The next stock on the list done exactly the same. So again, come back, retested the low, false break here, and then had a bit of a rally. It's just happening over and over again. That sort of setup there. TER, I thought this is sort of interesting here. Just hasn't gone to a new low here, but this has sort of come back in 3 waves there. Starting to sort of build here. Still hasn't taken a swing high yet, so you probably want to see a bit more, but this is one just to keep an eye on there. Yeah, don't love it, but just one to watch. STX, I thought, this one looks pretty interesting here, Chris, because had a pretty strong trend, big clump of volume in there, bit of a pullback on light volume, bit of a rally on volume again, bit of a pullback on light volume, some decent volume in there, but then we did see a bit of selling in there. Did see a decent clump again, but then a deeper pullback. But we've rallied again on good volume. Congested did this sort of sideways move under the height, which I always like. And then we're seeing this big clump of volume again. After that clump of volume, this is pretty much, haven't seen a lot of selling in here so far. So the whole thing there is sort of sitting, it's come back in a little 3-wave manner here. No selling so far. So it's kind of looking constructive to me. Just needs to sort of see a bit of volume come in there. But yeah, nothing negative there so far. Just definitely the momentum is with the upside there.
You're probably happy it's sitting on top of the previous high as well, right?
Yeah, sitting above there, a little bit of space there. So spacing is quite good. Just needs to see a bit of a volume bar here come in, and away we go. I mean, if you look at those WMG, I mean, the big ones that have sort of have run here for a while, they cool off, have a bit of a consolidation now. I think. Let me see. I think they just sort of have these, Can't find one there. You can't show a good example there, but yeah, I think it's sort of constructive there anyway. So we just want to sort of see them come back here. FHC, look, just going sort of sideways. QPM, I thought looked okay here. maybe sort of building a bit small here. BTH, what was interesting there, just because it's probably in that tech sector, it's getting a bit of movement in there. So has come back to retest an old low there. Starting to see some signs there. Thought that was okay. Again, you probably got your margin on your low here on your weekly, which is okay. A couple that were featured last week, Chris, were on the, I think it's important because that uranium sector was sort of one that sort of broke out last week. It's pulled back here, but pulled back on pretty light volume so far, and now sort of put a higher low in. So I think Paladin and Deep Yellow with the uranium stocks there. So it's just had a really tight little pause there. Not too much selling in there. Hasn't got going here, but still sort of constructive. And then obviously that lithium sector as well was the two sectors that were in the launch pad there last week. So I think those lithium stocks have most of them have sort of gone higher here. So I think there was a few there that were all pretty robust from last week. So interesting list there. There's a few stocks in there to watch. But again, just remember we're looking for stronger stocks. We're looking for them to have a bit of a breather. We want to see that coil sort of tightening up. We want to see the lighter volume through there. So one stock on your list, Chris, that you sent me, which I think again was sort of leading sector, so a sector which is robust, stock which has got reasonable sort of fundamental filter there, and one where basically all our coils are all tightening up there. And that was sort of AD8. So I know this is sort of tightening up under the high here, but so far this is, it's definitely not in a hurry. So it's been building here sort of slowly here, but it is in that sort of, in terms of all the green lights, it is in the leading sector. It is, sort of building pretty firmly here. It's just showing all the sort of right characteristics there at the moment. Just building sort of slowly here, but we just probably, I'm long a few of these. I'm just haven't got a big position there. I've just, I'm just kind of keep edging my sort of stop high here, just in case. I know a few of them have failed here. I've noticed those ARBs, which look like they were going to push through. They didn't, but on the same token, they haven't rolled over either, which is this is pretty typical of the market here. I think FPH did sort of something similar to this, sort of, looked like it was going to break out, didn't break out, came back in the range again, and then sort of climbed here. But it's not in a hurry here. So maybe this 88 is just going to meander sort of slowly higher here, but still constructive there. The fact that, look at that price action, look how tight it is in there. So,
ideally, you'd want to be seeing more volume as it's climbing, but it's sitting within that consolidation of 2 months now, is it? So how do you read volume in a scenario like that?
Well, it gives you a little shakeout. It gives you, like yesterday was a little shake too. So I was like, it's the one thing I've sort of stopped doing in this market is trying to buy momentum. So I'm actually identify the stocks I like, and then I wait patiently for them to have a couple of down days, and then I might add to them there. So I have actually added to this 88 here in the last few days, but I did wait patiently, and yesterday looked, it didn't look so good, but I know it's throwing these days up all the time, and all the stocks are throwing these negative days up in there all the time. So really trying to shake you out here. So that's why I think probably just a market where maybe I'm trading slightly smaller position size, but also trying to give myself a little bit of room. But I definitely am a little bit more active. I'm just sort of edging up as well. So just look at the trick environment there. It's a funny week for me. I sort of probably started off the start of the week, some fairly decent red days for me, but then the last couple of days have been some big green days. So just got to apply your rules, apply your practice. As I think some of the best traders sort of say, if you can look back and if you got the same signal again, would you trade it the same way? And if you can, then that's it doesn't matter if you get it wrong, because it's not about being wrong here. It's just about having the process right. So definitely got to, maybe adjust to the environment, but just important to have your process. I mean, there'll be periods there where the market churns here and doesn't move much. And it's probably more important to sort of, if you get this, I've definitely got sort of shooken out the last week or so of some positions. But, there's lots of little paper cuts there, which kind of, if you get a few of them, it does hurt a little bit. It's just more annoying than anything else. But then all of a sudden you get a couple of big days. I've had 2 big days in a row here. And that's like, okay, I feel, it's like you're going out the golf course and you only have 2 or 3 good shots, but they bring you back those good ones again. So this week's ended pretty nice for me. So all of a sudden feeling a bit dreary Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday here, I'm feeling on top of the world. So that's a little bit like trading there. So you got to sort of try and ride those emotions. But the key there is just the process. Just make sure that process sort of stands up. So if the same thing happened again, would you do the same thing? So so I've been stopped out of a couple of things here, and then I've put a couple of trades on, which I'm actually more excited about my new trades as well. Got some really sort of good risk reward parameters there. So these false breaks, loving those. They're just sort of setting up everywhere in the market. So the beauty of that false break is if you sort of get a new low and it sort of closes above, you got your stop there nice and tight. And if you get an up move here, then your risk reward parameters are fantastic. So you just need a couple of big moves there. So need a couple of 360s where you have a big move and it keeps going. Just need a couple of those. So we had a couple of those. We just had more paper cuts here, unfortunately. But that's the way the environment goes. Sometimes you just important the process sort of stands up. That's all. It's okay to lose.
It's okay to lose, but as you're saying, you stick with the process. And if you review your trades and you look back and say, well, would I have taken that trade again, applying the right process? And if I summarize it, I think what you're doing is scanning the markets like you're doing with these lists. Then you're building your shortlist to watch and review and wait for breakouts or wait for the right setup. And then within that, if there's a trigger, you're actually filtering it for a trigger for a certain setup, like a volatility contraction pattern or a false break or whatever type of pattern you're looking at. And then you're looking for the right risk to reward ratio to make sure that if you are deploying capital at risk in the markets, it's going to give you the right kind of payoff if you're going to take on that risk. So that's kind of the summary of the process, is it?
Yeah, that's right. I was listening to a podcast during the week. Actually, I think Peter Borish was getting interviewed by Michael Cavell, and I think he said, are you interested in making money or are you interested in being right? That's the essence of trading. So we have to get used to being wrong in trading. That's the beauty there. And they sort of like Michael Cavell is obviously a trend trader, so they're wrong 60% of the time. So you have to get used to being wrong 60% of the time if you're a trend trader. It's the making money out of the 40%. That's where the big dollars are made and where the money's made, and being able to hold those things. So traders,
Well, the emphasis of or in that statement, in that quote, do you like to be right or do you like to make money, with the implication, especially for trend traders, that you're not going to get both at the same time. So be wrong and make money, or be right and don't make money, or less likely.
Yeah, if you've got an ego there and it can't handle a few losses there, this is probably not the right game. It's where you need to sort of slap it out of yourself. That's basically what it comes down to. Yeah.
Well, if you slap it out of yourself, it will probably show up in the bank account in a positive direction once the ego's out the door.
Exactly.
Well, that's a good summary for the week. We've got the momentum leaders and then the launchpad stocks, those with the best weekly improvement in their momentum. You've picked out a fair few good ones to add to this week's list. So we'll say thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
For those who want to see more about the strategies that Gary's talking about, he's talked about false breaks. We've got a whole video on springs, very similar to false breaks, that breaks through in details how to find those trades, what to look for in the criteria. There's also the volatility contraction pattern, Mark Minervini's strategy. That's also in detail. On the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, we should say, is where Gary's Twitter handle is, and you can follow him there.